Good morning, everyone. I'm Kevin Allen, and I'm joined by my usual broadcast partner, former NHL defenseman Tom Laidlaw, who played 11 seasons with the New York Rangers and Los Angeles Kings. And this is the Laidlaw and Allen Report. We come to you twice a week to talk all things hockey. And today, Tom, it's a bit of a somber show. We're going to start out with, what I find to be just a horrendous story. And it's 11 years old. 11 years ago, a player, a member of the Black Aces, so he was a minor leaguer, called up for the playoffs just in case there were going to be some injuries. He was 20 years old at the time. He has a non-consensual sexual encounter with a Chicago Blackhawks coach, the video coach, Brad Aldrich. And what did the Blackhawks do? They knew about it. They were pretty sure, based on the testimony of one of the counselors, the mental skills coach there, who I think has training in this area, who said he believed the kid. They waited. They waited for 3 weeks till after the Blackhawks had won the cup, and the investigation showed that. According to witnesses, John McDonough, who was fired last year as team president, and then Joel Quenneville, who said he wasn't involved.
He's head coach.
Head coach at the time of the Blackhawks, now with the Panthers. He supposedly, along with John McDonough, explained about the importance of trying to win the cup and no distractions, and he just thought the timing of it was not good, and if they could wait a little bit, which they did, but here's what bothers me the most about this, Tom. After they waited, they just turned it over to human resources, and instead of going to the police, which I would have done, I think you would have done, because you have history with this, with having represented Sheldon Kennedy. They gave Brad Aldrich an opportunity to resign rather than go through an investigation, and he resigned. He went off then and eventually ended up as assistant coach up in northern Michigan, was convicted of, I don't know if having a sex act or propositioning, but one of the two, of a high school kid. That high school kid is now, of course, a man, and he is also suing the Blackhawks. So the fallout of all this is Stan Bowman resigned as general manager. He was part of it. He was a first-year general manager. Another team executive, McIsaac, also was out. McDonough was already gone. Some others were also gone as well. The NHL is going to talk to Kevin Cheveldayoff, who was an assistant GM at the Blackhawks at the time. Now he's the GM of Winnipeg, and they're going to talk to Quenneville. Quenneville earlier I guess, lied and said he wasn't involved. But the eyewitnesses, according to the investigation, and it's important, this investigation was not done by the Blackhawks. They hired a outside law firm with from what I've read, a very good reputation for doing it. And they came out, and when they made the report, they said the Blackhawks said there were no limitations. And he said the Blackhawks were very cooperative. The ownership was. The ownership, it was said they didn't know about it, and the investigation sort of bears that out. Although, I'm sure some people are going to say, how could they not know? But that's what investigators know. The investigators found no one that said that the Wirtz family knew anything about it. Now, the CEO, Danny Wirtz, he wasn't even around then. He was a young man. So he didn't know, certainly, at the time that it happened. But they certainly found out about it after the lawsuits came out.
Wow.
To me, it's just really it's just a horrible tale, and it comes down to the importance of winning.
I know. And it's also, and Kevin, I hear you, and I agree with you totally in the winning part, but it's also like the ignorance of, okay, let's turn the clock back. So way back, I can't remember how many years ago it was. Well, you and I have known each other for 30 years.
Right.
Now I started the agent business about 30 years ago, and that's when we met each other before, but that's when we really became close. And obviously we were both together, going through the Sheldon Kennedy stuff. And briefly, we told a story before. Sheldon Kennedy wasn't initially a client of mine, but he asked me to represent him. He was friends with Dallas Drake. They were playing on the Detroit Red Wings. And Sheldon had a lot of problems, drugs and alcohol, getting in trouble, but was a great kid. I knew him from, we'd gone to lunch together and everything, great kid. So he asked me to represent him. Shortly after he asked me to represent him, he told me that he had been sexually abused by his junior coach, this Graham James, from the time he was 14 years old. So at that point, I was completely ignorant, to be very honest. I did not know. I was a farm boy from Canada, hockey player, really never dealt with that subject at all. And we were very fortunate that the NHL and the NHLPA had just started their player assistant program, and the doctors took over from there and did a great job. I mean, you were part of it, writing all the stories, knew what was going on. And I was there for Sheldon. But again, my knowledge of what to do, what to say, I'm obviously much more schooled in it now, but at the time didn't know what I was doing. So I can understand that maybe they didn't know. But as we were talking before we got on the show, as much like I know Joe Quenneville, I know Kevin Sheldayoff, and I mean, I was getting before the show, I'm thinking to myself, well, I want to back them up and say they're good guys, but okay, they may have been good guys, but man, they made a terrible decision. Like if it was their children that had been abused, would they have done the same thing? Just let this guy go, and now he goes off and abuses more kids. I mean, after the hockey world went through the Sheldon Kennedy thing, and it was a big thing in the hockey world, to say that they didn't know that they should have done more. And I know we can say, well, Stan Bowman was first-year GM, Kevin Sheldayoff was an assistant, but they're human beings. You know, like have a meeting and say, guys, we need to find out what we should do here. And you said it before the show too, and very accurately you said it. The winning at the cost of what this does to young people, the sexual abuse. And frankly, I agree with you. You said it too. I don't agree that it would have taken away from winning. Guys go through stuff all the time. Marty St. Louis, when he came to the Rangers here, lost his mother during a playoff run and fought through it and played fantastic, and full marks to him. So there's just so many things. Like I know you are too. Like you've been associated with the National Hockey League for many years. Some fantastic people in the hockey world. I love the National Hockey League. It's a dream of my life to play in the NHL. I'm very proud to do it. But right now, I got to tell you, these guys that have allowed this to happen, it just, I mean, okay, you could say that they're unaware of the damage that's done. Well,
yeah,
I don't know.
Well, it's a really a complicated tale, and you know, I'm bothered on so many different levels. I'm bothered that they decided that they wanted to delay this because they didn't want it to be a distraction for the team. That they reached that conclusion, and I'm bothered that they waited till after the Stanley Cup was over to do it. And there was consequences to that, according to the investigation. Brad Aldridge, during that period between May 23rd and June 14th, when he was finally confronted, he actually had propositioned another intern at the Blackhawks. Wow. Now, I don't know what came of that. I just know that that's what the investigators said. Yeah. But I'm also bothered that, you know, they allowed him to share and be around the players during all that time. Like he continued in his duties after they knew about it and they were delaying, confronting him on it, continued on with his duties. He was around players. He was still around young players. Those Black Aces were still there. Gosh. In fact, at one of the celebrations, the investigators pointed out that the person that he allegedly sexually abused was present at that celebration. So that the Blackhawks allowed him to be in the same area.
Oh, a player. That is just, I got to tell you, I have never been less proud of the National, and I shouldn't say the National Hockey League, right? Because the National Hockey League is full of fantastic people doing fantastic things. But this organization,
it's really an ugly mess. And the NHL, you know, I buried a little bit of the lead here. They fined the Blackhawks $2 million. And Gary Bettman has said that he wants to talk to both Sheldayoff, who is still employed by an NHL team as Winnipeg Jets general manager, and Joe Quenneville, who, you know, is part of this. Now, could they face league suspension over this?
Well, I mean, see, to me, there's a couple of things. First of all, Sheldon Kennedy, he went through. First of all, his abuse was horrific. And his strength to come out, and he did it by himself. There's other players that were abused by Graham James at the time, and he spoke to those other players. Now, one other player went to the RCMP, at least one other, I can't remember, but did that privately. Didn't want to come out public, and that's fine. You have to understand that. Another player, a prominent player who'd been abused, didn't participate at all and helped Sheldon with Graham James. So for Sheldon to go through all that and do it all publicly, he didn't have to do it publicly. He did it publicly to help other people, to bring it to light of what was going on with these coaches and to protect kids and to help kids. So for him to go through all that and for them to do nothing is a shame. Now, I hope what comes from it is that the NHL uses this as an opportunity to help other kids and to get them away from these predators and to help other people understand that these predators are out there. Like, to me, to just punish somebody, again, this is my view. If I'm the NHL, I'm calling up Sheldon Kennedy. I'm saying, Sheldon, what do we do? You've lived through this, both the abuse and fighting through it. He's a spokesperson. He's a fantastic public speaker now. I called him up, say, Sheldon, what do we do? We want you to come in and tell us how we fix this, how we stop this from happening to other kids, not just in hockey, just in everyday life. Be the leaders in this thing. So I hope that happens. We'll see.
Yeah, and it was classic predatory behavior by this coach, and by that I mean there is kind of an MO, a modus operandi with these predators, and he singled out a younger player, and according to the investigation, they interviewed John Doe. That's what they called the guy. They never identified who the player was. They called him John Doe. They interviewed both John Doe and Brad Aldrich.
Oh, I didn't know that. Oh.
Yeah, they interviewed Brad Aldrich. They both obviously said there was a sexual encounter, although Brad Aldrich has claimed it was consensual.
Yeah.
Okay, but according to John Doe, one of the things he said during all this was, either you go along with this or I can hurt your career.
Yeah.
Yep. That's a real standard.
That is the pattern.
Yeah. So that's another disturbing aspect of it. But now in my mind, the Blackhawks are culpable for what happened to that high school kid because they told no one.
Yep.
So that it was not out there. He was able to get other jobs, other opportunities. And I think that kid has a good case. Now, we'll give the Wirtz family some credit here, not much, but some, because I like the way they handled this investigation. Danny Wirtz was not even around, would have been a young man when this was going on. And he was at the forefront. Rocky Wirtz was there with him. But he was the one to handle this. And he gave, not one of these wishy-washy apologies, a real apology to John Doe, where he basically said that, we did you wrong. And he also said that he had instructed his lawyers to try to settle this. And what he said with basically with an amount that speaks to the totality of it all. As well, and to the other individuals, he said.
Right. And that's all great. I know you agree too. That's great. They're doing that. But again, that's an opportunity at the NHL level, at the individual club level here to help. This goes on so much. I learned so much about how many young kids are traumatized by this for life. I mean, it takes them forever. Some of these people. I have people I know very well that have been abused, and it takes a lot for them to fight back and become whole again, I guess.
Well, I mean, I agree with you, but I think now we've kind of gone the other way where we know that this stuff has to go on. That we don't still do it. We need some education to follow this.
Yes. Yeah.
But then sometimes we forget about the victim. And I'm just, my only point is, and again, I'm not, this was handled so poorly by the Blackhawks that there's no getting out of it. But I do like the fact that they formally apologize, and it sounds like they are going to take care of the victim.
That's very true. No, you're right. That's a very valid point. Remember the victim. Yeah,
remember the victim. So he's kind of moved on, and obviously he's had to relive this. During the investigation, and kudos to. There have been some players who have supported him through this, who have stood up, who have taken some abuse, by the way, on social media.
Yep. I can't remember his name. There's one right shot defenseman that played then, came out months ago and said, "What are you talking about?" Everybody knew. Like all the players knew.
Yeah.
So it's like then that's the next question. Then again, I don't know. I think back when I was a player, was I equipped to be intelligent enough to? And I wasn't, and I'm ashamed to say that. But as players like the Jonathan Taves and those guys are there and they're leaders and they hold so much weight, and apparently they all knew as well. Isn't that correct?
Well, they didn't go into that. I didn't read the whole investigation yesterday. I only did the highlights of it just because I had to get a story out. I would like to read it because I wanted to know that as well. Did the players all know? That didn't come out in the presentation. They just laid out who the front office people were that knew. And
this is the kind of thing for me that there's no separation there. Any adult person who knew about it, should have done something about it.
Could do something. I guess anybody could dial up the police.
Yeah. But that's one issue too, though. I don't know the legalities that well, but remember the victim had rights too, right? So
right.
So it almost like you have to take the victim to, I guess not though. You can go to the police and say,
well, you can go to the police, but I mean, it's up to the victim to collaborate what people have reported.
Definitely.
So, and it sounded like he wanted help because he did tell the Blackhawks counselor that it had happened. Although, the guy, Jim Gary, reported that John Doe said he told him everything, and Jim Gary said, no, he gave me a limited version of what it was. But he did say to investigators, even with that limited version, I found it very troublesome, and I believed him.
Right. And the one gentleman we forget too is this Paul Vincent. And I know Paul. I haven't seen him in years. I knew him pretty well. He was in the agent business, lives in Rhode Island. He was a skating coach. And apparently, I think that's who John Doe went to initially.
Originally, yes. That's right.
And then Paul Vincent went to speak to all the upper management.
No, not according to the investigation.
Oh, okay.
He informed.
That's a head trainer or something.
No, was he an employee of the Blackhawks?
Paul Vincent was, yes. I think he was.
Okay. He would have informed then McIsaac, I think.
That's okay.
They didn't identify who informed McIsaac, but they said that McIsaac was informed by another employee of the Blackhawks. So that was probably Vincent then.
Yeah.
And then McIsaac told, Bowman and McDonough and all that group. And then within an hour of qualifying, this is the other thing that just struck me as just so wrong. So they qualify for the Stanley Cup final. They win that game to get in the final. And within an hour, 7 members of management, including Gary, met. And that's when it was decided. And then ultimately it was decided that McDonough would handle it. And he said that only one witness remembered that McDonough said, I'm going to speak to John Doe, which he didn't do. And then 3 weeks went by before he acted on it.
And Paul Vincent has been speaking publicly lately that these guys were lying. They were not telling you the truth. It's one of those things you're thinking, okay, 7 people in the room were being informed, and they're all lying, saying they didn't know. How do you think you're going to get away with that? I mean, there's an investigation.
Did they all say they didn't know? The investigator didn't say that. I know, like, they made a point that Stan Bowman was the one guy who came out and just fessed up.
Maybe that's true, but I mean, I'm really troubled by. I got to tell you, Joel Quenneville. I've lost it. I don't know if I have any respect for him. How do you make?
I bothered as well that he came out. It would have been better if he just said, "Look, I've been advised, not to comment."
Yes.
That would have been much better than.
Because I would have said to if I had a client, I would have said to him, listen, you can't speak about this publicly right now. Don't lie, but just don't speak about it publicly. Right.
It would be best if they did it that way. But it's just an ugly black eye for the league as well, even though the league didn't play a role in it. But it is a black eye for them. Again, I think 11 years later, I find that some people, the league among them, are trying to do the right thing now, but it's too little, too late.
Yeah.
It should have been a long time ago, 11 years ago, that we did that. And, I appreciate what the league is doing now. I think $2 million fine is a significant fine,
Yep.
which sends a message around the league. And I love the way that the investigation was handled. The guy, as he was talking about, 139 people were interviewed.
Is that right? Wow. That's pretty impressive.
139 people.
You know what? And that is a good point for you. The fact that they did a thorough and independent investigation on their own organization. Yeah.
Yeah. It's 139. And, basically he just said, we said right away, will there be any interference and limitations? And Danny Wirtz said, no, you'll do what you want. And he said he at one point, I can't remember, but it seems to me it was like 49 boxes of material they had asked for, and they got it. And they had so many gigabytes of information. They interviewed some people multiple times.
Right.
So the 139 people they interviewed, and I love the way they set it up because, and you could see a little of opinion crept into it a little bit because one of the investigations said the recollections of that management. Not many of the people who were involved had many recollections of that meeting. They couldn't remember what happened at that meeting. However, they said one person said, and several people said that the multiple people who were at the meeting said McDonough and Quenneville started talking about the possibility of distraction, and the timing on this needed to be right. Wow.
And that Rick Westhead, I believe it is, writes a lot of stuff. He posts on TSN's website. He had an article a couple months ago too that the Predator had some business that he started upstate Michigan, I think, and actually recruited interns from several colleges or universities in Michigan. So he's still dealing with young kids too. So that's the troubling part too, because these predators don't stop.
No, they don't. I'm surprised though that he's in a position to hire young people. Usually, in terms of the probation, because he was convicted.
Yeah. True.
So I don't know what's happened on that, but I was stunned that he was willing to talk to the investigators.
Really. Yeah.
Yeah. So, well, I don't know that there's anything more to add. I think we know that this was poorly handled by the Blackhawks, and I think 11 years later, now the NHL and the Blackhawks are left to clean up the mess. We had a pledge from Danny Wirtz that the Blackhawks organization will do things the right way. Although, the one thing that bothered me, another thing that bothered me is they had guidelines in place for how to handle it, and they just ignored them. That was one of the points of the investigator. They had on the books a policy for handling the. And they completely went against that. And at the end,
I just hope that something good comes from it, right? Like make a pledge to not just in hockey, not just in sports, but the NHL could really take the lead here, because this is a huge problem in our society. A lot of people don't talk about, and we need like safe sport. Like USA Hockey does a good job. If you're going to be a coach for USA Hockey, you have to go through the safe sport program, and it really. I was kind of like, oh God, I got to do this. I was coaching, but then once I went through, it's like, it was really good. They pointed a lot of good things that you've got to be careful that you don't put you in a position as a coach, being alone with kids and all that kind of stuff. And I just, I hope that the league, and I have faith in the league. The league has done a lot of good stuff. I hope the league really takes the lead here and says, okay, we're gonna, we're really gonna, bring light to the situation and show that there's a lot of it happening, and here's ways that we can protect kids. Find out, what coaches are, bad coaches, what people are bad people out there. So,
well, if you're owner of the Florida Panthers, or you're Bill Zito, the general manager, and your coach is Joel Quenneville, what is there any issue there?
Well, okay. So, all right, Joel, tell us what happened. And obviously I think Joel now can't lie about this. He was part of it. He was an adult male that chose to say nothing so that this predator could continue to be a predator. So if Joe Quenneville wants to say, listen, I was terribly wrong, like I apologize, and really mean it, and then be a spokesperson to help stop this, then I say, you know what? Okay, you made a mistake. It was a terrible mistake. You're doing something about it. But if you're just going to get up there and either continue to lie or just not say anything and not change, like here's a head coach in the National Hockey League, a very well-respected head coach in the National Hockey League, with an opportunity now, just like I was talking about with the league, to really help kids out there, get them away from predators and stop as much of this as you can. If they take that stance that he's going to do that and really pledge to do it, not just one day, not just 1 month, 1 year, for the rest of his life, to come and say, listen, I messed up and kids were hurt because of my mistake. Then I'd say, okay, we're in. In fact, we admire you. We admire you for your stance. But
well, USA Hockey yesterday started its search for a new GM. Chris Stan Bowman, of course, resigned as GM of that as well. They resisted a call from Congress to throw him out when he was simply under investigation. And I'm okay with that. I mean, this is America. You should be innocent until proven guilty. And although, why didn't Bowman resign earlier when he knew what was going on?
Well, that's true, right? So now he resigns because.
Yeah, because it came out, says that. So anyway, but I don't know who the new GM would be. They haven't named one. They've got a lot of good options there. They generally try to give it to someone who hasn't done it before, but you've got Bill Zito, you've got David Poyle, you've got Brian Burke, you've got Don Waddell,
Ray Sherrill's out there.
Ray Sherrill. I think they would take an active GM though over.
Hire. So you think Chicago will take somebody away?
No. I'm talking about
USA Hockey.
Yeah,
okay. Gotcha.
Yeah,
gotcha.
Yeah. I mean, for the regular GM there, I think Ray Sherrill certainly would be a candidate to be sure. So.
Well, I tell you, my blood.
Jim
we're going to talk about today. My blood pressure is pumping today talking about that subject.
How about Jim Rutherford in Chicago?
What's that, sorry?
How about Jim Rutherford in Chicago?
Ooh, wow.
Yeah.
With all this stuff that's going on, you need that experienced guy that's been through.
Well, and not only that, but you've got on top of everything else, you got problems with the team. The team's a mess, they got they're tied against the salary cap, and there's no one better than Jim Rutherford make trades when he's tight with the cap.
Yep. Yeah.
And they need some movement. Let's talk a little bit about some happier stuff here. Your friend Don Waddell has a very good team in Carolina.
Yes, he does. Have they lost yet?
No. And the Florida Panthers, man, I love that team. And they got it all too. You watch that team, and I just I can't say enough good things about Bill Zito. And he's one of your former brethren, an ex-agent. Yeah. It makes me think you missed your calling. You should have gone and become a GM.
No. You just think that I would be able to do these shows with you all the time.
Yeah. You'd get paid a lot more money though for doing,
I'll lose all the hair. I'll lose all my hair. I
think that already happened. Yeah. But the other thing too is that this is what I love about sports. So the Calgary Flames started out poorly. They looked terrible, for the beginning of the season, and now they won 4 in a row.
On the road.
They're beating metropolitan teams too, which are that's a good division.
Yeah.
The
Rangers didn't play well the other night against them, but Calgary didn't let them play well either. I mean, they pound. They're more physical.
Yeah, and you could say we can all talk about Daryl Sutter, how the game passed him by, and he's a 1950s and 60s guy, and all that kind of stuff. But the truth is, that still works. Mucking it up.
Hockey's hockey. Hockey hasn't changed. I mean, they can use different terminology like backside check and pressure and all this kinds of stuff. But hockey's hockey. If you outwork the other team and you're disciplined, talent, you win.
Although now you're starting to sound like the Sutters. The Sutters always think hard work will win out over talent, and that's just baloney.
Will be skilled. No, it's not. It's a fact. Will be.
No, it isn't. It works if you're close, but if I don't care how hard you worked in the 1980s, you weren't going to beat the Oilers. They were just a great team. Now,
but they also had will. It wasn't just their skill; they also had.
But the point the Sutters always made when you make it sound like you give me a hardworking team and I'll take it right to the cup. Well, no, it's not that simple. hard work. I mean, it's silly not to think that hard work helps you. Of course it does.
Right.
But, you can't, I'm sure many a player has sat in hearing one of those speeches going, I don't know I don't care how hard we work, we don't have any Wayne Gretzky's,
It reminds me of the old Pierre Rouge line where he was in Montreal. I think he was getting paid like $250,000. He wasn't back checking, but he's scoring a ton of goals. And he said, somebody asked him a question about it. He said, "Well, they pay me $250,000 a year to score goals. If they want me to back check, they can pay me another $250,000."
Yeah. So I mean, obviously, what you want is the combination.
Yeah.
But I love the line, which I do think is the truth and reality, when Herb Brooks says, "You're not talented enough to win by talent alone."
Yeah, that's true. Yeah,
that is a truism that cannot be denied.
Yeah. I got to touch on this because he's one of my all-time favorite players. Shea Weber announced that he is retiring, but he'll stay on long-term injury reserve, so he'll still get paid his money. Montreal gets the cap relief. So.
Did he announce it, or did Jonathan Drouin announce it?
Yes, I'm sorry. You're right. Yes.
He did announce it. Yeah. And he's going to be a scout, eh?
Right. So he flew out to meet the team out in Seattle, and
Yeah. So I think Jonathan Drouin spilled the beans.
Yeah, right.
Oh,
And I saw an interview that Gerard Gallant did too, and another. I think it was Ryan Reeves spilled the beans on something. I think they had a video session the day after they lost to Montreal, and I don't think that Gallant. It wasn't like it was top secret, but I don't think he wanted it out there. But I guess Reeves was interviewed and just said, "Oh yeah, we had a video session this morning." So the reporters asked Gallant in the press conference. He kind of laughed about it. You can tell he wasn't mad, but he was rather. In fact, he said it. I think I'd rather the guys not talk about that stuff. Yeah,
every once in a while, like coaches do slip up. Earlier this season, Jeff Blashill was talking about injuries, and he accidentally said Vrana had a shoulder injury.
Oh, yeah.
And one of the reporters said, "Did you mean an upper body injury, Jeff?" And he goes, "Oh yeah, I did mean upper body injury." So
I think I know. Herb Brooks was father.
Yeah,
that's true. Yes, he was.
Yeah.
So Susan, I didn't see this last night. Susan says, "How many times is Subban going to get away with the slew foot? Injured Reeves in preseason, did again last night." Calgary. I did not see that, Susan.
I didn't see it either. He has been known for using that tactic. So
what a fall from grace. I mean, here's a Norris Trophy winner in Subban, and now.
People think he's going to get moved at the trade deadline. I don't see it.
Yeah, who'd want him?
So, right? It's even at the deadline, his salary is going to be prohibitive. Right.
And it's a team. So if you're going to get him at the deadline, it's because you think you're a contender and he's going to make a difference for you and fill a hole. I just don't see.
I'll tell you what defenseman, though, I think will move the trade deadline is Giordano out in Seattle. He's a guy who is making good money, but I think, he's a veteran guy and, he's a two-way guy too. He can help you offensively and defensively. There just aren't as many of those.
Yeah, I know. Captain of the team though, right? I don't know. I just don't have faith that I don't think they built, and I know there's different times and George McPhee took advantage of a lot of general managers, but I just don't think they built what Vegas built and just the culture part of it too. Not just the,
I don't think they ever really had the opportunity to do what George did, just because everything had changed and they had all figured it out and what to do.
Yeah, I was thinking about Ron Gresher's comment here. I think Ron was actually my father. He's old enough.
How old is Ron?
65 or 66. I cannot remember. Maybe both. You might be 65 and 66.
65 and 66. Okay.
Yeah. So I'm going to make it. See, here's how my cooking has evolved now. So for my children to ask me to make them something that I'd made in the past. So my son and his wife had asked me to make some more homemade pumpkin muffins this morning. So I've got to make some pumpkin muffins and run them over.
Yeah.
You're excited about that, aren't you?
I am. I'm excited to hear you're going to make some pumpkin muffins. That was your dad's favorite or your mom?
My father loved those. Yes. Yep.
Yeah. Your mom made them for your dad.
Yes. Oh yeah. Totally. Yes. I told you that. My mother, her cooking evolved as well. When she first started making her cooking, everything was made It was cooked right through. I told you, like, the roast beef was it. There's no pink left in that roast beef. But she really, to her credit,
You had to make sure it was dead, you know.
Yeah, to her credit, she really her cooking evolved, and
Yeah. That's I'm sure she'd be proud of you and your
that's right.
evolution as because you didn't start cooking to when 3 or 4 years ago.
Well, I started cooking when I first got divorced. My boys were small, so like over 20 years ago. But it was there was a long way, a lot of improvement. Way back when I thought that the giblets in my turkey were garbage.
That is amazing.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, we've gone a little over as we usually do, but we appreciate you listening. We'll be back next week when hopefully it will be a happier tales about hockey. You know, hockey's supposed to be fun, and that story today was not fun.
I know.
It was fired up, Terry, but it needs to be talked about because, as Tom points out, you hope some good will come out of it, that people will get educated about putting vulnerable people, and you know. It's just because you're in a tough sport, it doesn't mean you're not vulnerable to these kinds of things.
Totally. And these athletes and people who run these organizations have such a great voice too. They're respected so well, like especially like a guy like Joe Quenneville. That's why I just it's an opportunity here. Okay, mistakes have been made. People were hurt by those mistakes. Now let's reach out and make sure we can protect kids in the future. So.
Absolutely. Anyway, if you want to read my story about this yesterday, I have there's 1,000 words about explaining sort of what happened and what the investigation unfolded, how it unfolded. That's at hockeybuzz.com. I also you can read me at DetroitHockeyNow.com.
Good. I'm going to read that. I want to read that. And again, if you want to listen to the radio version of this show, you can go to radio.co at 365 Sports. Again, that's radio.co at 365 Sports. We'll see everybody next week. Have a great weekend.